To the story now, a 27-year-old man is expected to apply for bail at the Zaaiplaas Periodical Court this week for the rape of a 101-year-old woman in Limpopo. The assault took place on the 27th of July. He faces charges of rape and housebreaking. To speak more on this, let's welcome African feminist, human rights defender and executive director, Callas Foundation Caroline Peters. Caroline, a very good afternoon to you and thank you so much for your time. Of course, we meeting at, again, an unfortunate incident and a horrific one at that. I mean, whilst the rate of sexual violence in South Africa is among the highest recorded in the world, incidences of this nature, of rape, are still hard to comprehend. I mean, your reaction to this latest incident that yet again sees someone as vulnerable being violated?
Hi. Yes, good afternoon, Anati, and thank you again for the invitation. I mean, we can all agree that this is a heinous act of violence and it's disturbing. It reflects a terrifying disregard for the dignity and safety of our most vulnerable members, our elders, you know. And we once again see a rape of a 101-year-old woman. It's not just a crime against an individual, but it's an assault on our collective humanity and our societal values, Unati. So I also want to just applaud the response by the police in apprehending the suspect, so soon after this occurred. It's crucial that justice is served promptly and decisively.
I mean, the country is, of course, outraged, as you say, as this is an assault on our humanity. When will we see the outrage, though, turn to the entire country mobilizing to try and end rape, to try and end GBVF? I mean, is it just a lack of political will, or are, we as a society numb, to the point of taking no action in this regard?
Yes, Unati, I was saying at the beginning, on the 1st of August, when we were saying it's Women's Month, once again we see the lack of political will. I am really hopeful that the GNU is going to make a difference. But then I look at the amount of a budget allocated towards the resourcing. We speak about the National Strategic Plan and all the plans that's in place, but we're not resourcing it. So for me, there's a lack of will from our government shown and the lack of resources to fight the scourge of gender-based violence. There's such a worrying increase on the attack. We have our president calling it a pandemic. We saw with COVID how we could overturn a pandemic, how when we stand together, when we resource it, how it can change. But I want to say that the will for change just doesn't seem to be there. We know that, in 2021, we had a 93-year-old that was raped and murdered by a 24-year-old. And this matter reminded me so much about that. He was just sentenced, he pleaded guilty, sentenced to 20 years in the Dobao matter. But I want to say, and yet again, and that happened to Unati in Women's Month on the night of the 31st of July and the 1st of August, she was found murdered. And that's how we started it in 2021. And once again, we see femicide, we see, and the most vulnerable members is our elders. I feel we should feel appalled. We should feel ashamed as a nation. We should be hanging our heads in shame. If we look at the gender-based violence and the perpetration thereof to our most vulnerable, Unati.
Caroline, I want us to just turn our focus back to this latest case. 101 years old. We've seen a case in this country of a 9-month-old baby being raped. That is still a scar to many of us, dealing with this and having had reported on that particular case. And we also know that healing from trauma of abuse can be a prolonged process spanning several years. This is a woman who is 101 years old, a grandmother who probably, was living her last, few years on this earth. So she's been violated. How can one even begin to start, the healing from this particular abuse?
Now, I want to say several factors contribute You know, one major issue is the lack of respect and value placed on the elderly in our communities. You know, they are often seen as easy targets due to their physical frailty and their social isolation. So we have systemic issues, inadequate elder care, there's economical pressures, there's the breakdown of the family structures contribute to their vulnerability. And if we do not address these root causes through comprehensive social and legal reform, then we're going to have this happening all the time, Unati. So as civil society, as communities, so there needs to be protection and more protection and awareness around our elders. It's almost as if we've forgotten. We need to educate communities about the right and dignity of our elders. You know, when we speak about Ubuntu, it's a South African thing. When we speak about I am because of you, we say I stand on the shoulders of giants. I am because of who they were. You know, so how strong are we in that, in reclaiming that as African people? You know, legal reforms must ensure that there's harsher penalties for for crimes committed against the elderly to act as deterrent. You know, we must strengthen social support systems. We must ensure that older persons have access to care and are integrated into communities' life rather than isolating them. You know, there should be training for law enforcement on handling cases involving the elderly as well, Lunati.
And I mean, just Caroline, as we wrap up our conversation, you spoke a lot of key issues, particularly on the systemic issues. So in light of this ongoing onslaught on, you know, children and women, how do we then, or where do we begin, you know, to deal with these systemic issues that we know speak to a number of factors? You've mentioned them: socio-economic structures, patriarchy, etc. Especially because we are celebrating Women's Day this month. Where do we start? We've got a new government in place in a form of a government of national unity. One only imagines that with the thinking of different political parties, we might see change, because books have been written about rape. Books have been written about gender-based violence and where do we start, but we're still not shifting.
Unati, if we do not resource our implementation plans, we have the best legislation. We do not lack legislations on these bills. If we do not resource them, if we are serious about changing it, we need resources. We need our bills and our acts and any act and implementation thereof. We need preventative programs. We are a country that react to matters. So again, I want to say a 101-year-old woman is raped and there's a reaction to that. How do we prevent this? You know, if we have to start resourcing our bills, else we're not going to change the tide on this. So preventative work and resourcing, to me, we should start there.
And the justice system, do you think more should be done on that front? We've got this 27-year-old man now behind bars seeking bail. You know, what should be happening there in terms of this collective, you know, a process of trying to find justice for these women, these children that are being raped?
In Nati swift justice, I want to say we see already the court is at a stage where where matters is being postponed to 2025. We need to take action, no bail, justice system, faster turnaround time in the justice system so that we make sure there's a swift response to these heinous acts.
And the work that you do, particularly on these matters, just take us into your world. I mean, what are some of the stumbling blocks that you are meeting? I'm just looking at the outrage, you know, even on social media on this particular case. It's nothing new. We've seen it before. And as I mentioned, a 9-month-old baby being raped. We were outraged, but we're not turning that outrage into something that will translate in us at least curving and not being named as one of the raping capitals of the world. What are you seeing, and how can you bring us into your world for us as citizens to start actually paying attention and doing something about it?
Unati, we have been speaking since 2018. I think I spoke to you the first time, the year of Uyineni and all the other femicides and lots of other matters, the year of total shutdown, etc. Nothing has changed. We have seen an increase in this. So we've seen now, even with the femicide matter, Rosalind that was murdered by her husband. So we see. And then there's an outrage, and then there's nothing. So for us that works in the sector, for me, we see the climb. So from the first time it happens, right now in our office, Rosalind's children is being counseled, and it's a boy and a girl of 12 and 10 years old. You know, so there's the outrage after the event, and then nothing happens. And so it's in the media, and I think also the media plays a role in this, Sunati. I want to say that we need more media attention on these matters. So a typical day would be, and we see how the president stands up and say there's not going to be any bail for rapists or the ministers, etc. And the next thing we come to court and the rapist is granted bail of 1,000 rand. And so it's almost as if I have seen how activists even gets burnt out, get tired. We are tired of saying the same things over and over. It is as if, you know, we walk into brick walls. It is tiring, but you know, someone said to me the other day, please never stop raising your voice regarding this. But there's a few of our voices, and we become the unpopular persons. We become and we call them men haters, and it's not that either. You know, it's about, how do we continue to keep this conversation on the agenda, and how do we bring it into our households, Unati? That's where it's going to start. When me and you as mothers raise our children differently, when we speak about socialization and patriarchy, systemic things, how are we going to bring change to that?
Caroline, thank you so much for the work that you do, and of course, just commending the, the police and also the community following this swift arrest of this 27-year-old. Thank you so much. That was a difficult one. African feminist, human rights defender, and executive director, Callas Foundation Caroline Peters. Of course, this 27-year-old man is expected to appear in court and, of course, apply for bail after the rape of a 101-year-old woman in Limpopo.